Welcome back, everybody, to part two of this courageous conversation as shared by the Reverend Charles Claycomb, his experiences of a series of 6 dreams. As you have been hearing me say, the Reverend Father Robert Spitzer, who is an expert on near-death experiences, after hearing about Reverend Charles's own personal experiences, his opinion is that Reverend Charles had a near-death experience series, and there are several common denominators, such as the fear of death is gone. It's an extraordinary experience that is easily remembered and never to be forgotten, and no one's life is ever the same. So, Reverend Charles, welcome back for part two. And
Thank you,
again,
Jeff.
remind us as to the title of this series of dreams, please.
Okay. Well, if it ever becomes a book, and if the publisher accepts it, I want to call it Only a Glimpse, the dreams that delivered me to the face of God. I have a fear that the publisher will not see that very marketable, so we'll have to come up with some other title. But I still feel that captures really what these dreams represent for me.
Yes. So today, in this dream, you have titled it
simply the blue house. That's the essence of where this dream takes place. And I want you to know, I'll tell you up front, that I've been looking for that blue house for years now, and I've not yet found it. But every time I see a blue house, and there are a lot of blue houses in Wichita, it always catches my attention.
I'm sure. Yes, exactly. So without further ado, Reverend Charles, let's have you jump in and share this second dream, the blue house.
Well, thank you again, Jeff. Again, the pleasure to be with you. As I stated last time we gathered via virtual conversation, back on August the 6th of 2006, an incident occurred that delivered me to the hospital in the emergency room. And I was really affected by an event or a series of events that literally threatened my life, put me in great jeopardy. In the course of a hospital procedure, while I was admitted through the emergency room, my colon was accidentally perforated, and I was thrown into a condition called septic shock. Now, when one goes septic, especially within the GI tract itself, whenever it's ruptured with deadly toxins flowing out into the body, it's most likely a fatal condition. The infectious assault to the human body is so great that death will usually occur in short order. Usually comes as a result of low blood pressure, leading to multiple organ failure. One of the first things to go, oddly enough, is kidney function. I mean, it seems odd, that the kidneys will kill you every time, when they go away. And without the kidneys, the body has no way of cleansing itself, no way to try to fight the infection. So in a desperate attempt to save me, the medical team had to first perform a surgery, to repair the colon. And then they began very high dosages of antibiotics to fight the infection. They knew at the onset that the infection was going to be so severe that they left a portion of the incision open to the outside. In other words, they really never closed me up from the original surgical incision. And so they allowed it to sort of heal from the inside out. This led to a kind of a huge scar that resulted in a hernia that I guess I'll probably end up taking to my grave. Although, yeah, my abdomen is now closed. I just want you to don't worry about that picture in your head. Another life-saving procedure that was applied to my body was the infusion of vast amounts of what they call pressor fluids that literally filled me up, making me look like a kind of giant water balloon, with the purpose of applying internal pressure to save my vital organs in order to maintain my blood pressure. My blood pressure got so low that the doctors were concerned for not only my lung, kidney, liver, and other internal functions, but even the survivability of my heart and brain were in severe doubt. The low blood pressure caused my body to focus itself on saving those vital organs at the core of my body, thus sacrificing a lot of the extremities of my body. The result is I lost 7 toes and continue to this day having some numbness in my fingers and my feet, some neuropathy, as it's called. Despite all their best efforts, the physicians knew that still, despite all they'd done for me, that I was still likely to die. Even with all the miracles of medicine, good doctors always know the face of their own limitation. They cannot do the impossible. And my survivability was in the category of the impossible. But they kept saying, God bless them, and they kept trying. After I was infused with the pressure fluids, I was given extensive renal dialysis. And when I did wake up, days later, tubes were running here and there and everywhere. And I had lines on the inside and lines on the outside. And I continued to hear these various sounds of machines, the gasping sound of a ventilator, the swishing sound of the renal dialysis machine. I experienced the regular pumping of the automatic blood pressure cup that was just constantly going off. The room was illuminated by the light of monitors revealing my condition to nurses minute to minute. In fact, my room, I was so severe and so sick, they placed me intentionally just outside the nurses' station. And through all of this, I received a continuing line of visitors who would step into the room and kind of gaze at my sleeping self in the bed. And they held my hand and they articulated their support and their hope. So many persons came into my room and offered prayers or simply paused to shed a tear. I did sometimes see enough that I could see a tear dripping down their face, or the support they extended to my family I continue to hear about today. In fact, I had so many visitors inside the unit that the SICU staff had to begin to set restrictions on the number of visitors. I remember well the lines of my guests. I remember seeing people coming to see me, some of whom I hadn't seen in a long time. Among those who gathered around me were my wife, of course, and my children. But there were always those nearby. But I also remember so many colleagues of my ministry. And I specifically remember the presence of my district superintendent, Max Clayton, and my other district superintendent here in the Wichita district, Cheryl Bell. I remember so many from the Woodland Church and from my previous congregations who dropped in to see me. Many close friends from the past and present were doing what they could do to offer support. And at the time, I don't think I knew just how sick I was. I understand there were others who tried to see me and couldn't get in. They were caught up in the restrictions that were placed upon me. For example, I understand that our bishop at the time, Bishop Scott Jones, was kept out. That's not a good thing for the SICU staff to keep the bishop out of my room, but they did. He did come to see me later. And at the time, I was visited by my dear friend, Rabbi Michael Davis. I'm dropping names here because they know these stories, but also I'm so indebted to them. But Rabbi Michael Davis was there to see me, and other pastors from across the denomination. I think the bishop was a little perplexed to see the rabbi visiting me, but I enjoyed it. I've already shared the account of Cheryl Bell. I shared this the last time we talked. I didn't specifically mention Cheryl, but she was the one who led that wonderful prayer service on my behalf late one night when I was really at such a grim state. I was at my lowest point of my illness, having really been given at that time a 24-hour limit on life itself. In truth, shortly after this prayer service in SICU, it happened to be the point, it happened to be the place when I began to turn around in terms of the blood pressure. It began to turn around and my blood pressure began to rise to somewhat normal levels. Now, it would collapse a few times after that, but at least there was some signs of hope. But through this whole time, when so many visitors came and I was at so near death's door, I want to testify that I remember a whole other reality. Rather than being in this little cubicle inside the middle of SICU, I remember a whole nother place. Oh, everybody was there with me, all of my guests, my family, my friends. But in this other reality, I was in this most beautiful blue house. I knew it was blue, you see, because I had the ability, this is really amazing. I had the ability, although I couldn't get out of bed, I could sort of transverse around it. I could sort of float around here and there. And as I looked down, I remember looking upon the house from above. And I could see Wesley Medical Center across the street, across and up the street. But I could also look down and I could see this beautiful blue house below. I remember thinking to myself as a former chaplain, and I was a former chaplain at Wesley, and I was quite familiar with the Wesley campus. Oh, of course I remember this place. It's owned by the hospital or someone related to the hospital. That's what I was sort of thinking inside my dream. Yes, I'm in the hospital, and yet obviously I'm not in the hospital. And I recall the hospital chaplain coming to see me in the blue house. Indeed, she told me that she was especially assigned to the blue house. And in one moment, I knew that I knew exactly where I was. And then suddenly I had no idea where I was. But surely I had to remember this mysterious blue house. And wasn't it always here? Even today, I can still remember that spacious living room of the blue house. At other times, I would be out in the entrance area, kind of a terraced area where people were coming and going, always a line of people entering and exiting, in and out. And I remember on one particular day, I was in the blue house as it was raining outside. And I was lying on a gurney with this mysterious box, by the way, I talked about last time. It was always nearby. It always accompanied me. And many young nurses, medical interns, and residents were arriving in their crisp new uniforms and white jackets. Apparently, it was the opening day, I'm assuming here in my dream, that it's the opening day of the KU Medical School. And all of these folks were here in the Blue House enjoying this marvelous reception for all the new incoming students and young doctors. That's what I assumed was going on. The Blue House was obviously related to the medical school or the nursing school, and the reception consisted of a long, highly decorated table with white linen coverings. On the top of the table rested wine glasses filled with the most expensive wine just ready for someone to pick up and enjoy. The table also presented great blocks of delicious and colorful cheese. I remember the cheese. And there was also a table full of the loveliest of desserts. It was a banquet par excellence. It was a great party set right in front of me. But you know what? No one offered me a morsel of anything. I could formally transverse this house, but now I'm confined to the gurney and I could not get to the table. I couldn't get over there. Furthermore, no one among these young professionals even acknowledged my presence. It was almost like I broke into the party and they didn't see me. When anyone with whom I was acquainted would walk into that part of the house, they would walk over to see me and they would talk, while others paid no attention to me at all. It was all a bit confusing, as most dreams are, I suppose. In fact, one day while I was in this blue house, I remember seeing this long line of visitors standing over me. And I would look up at them and make eye contact and also attempt to speak to them, but I couldn't get a word out. I couldn't speak to them, but it was obvious, and it was also obvious that they couldn't hear me. There was no way for me to communicate back to them. And I thought to myself, oh my, I think I'm dead. I'm in the funeral home and I'm lying in a casket in this great stateroom. And before long, they're going to close me in and they're going to bury me. And I said to myself, I must let them know I'm here. I'm alive. Don't you understand? I'm alive. Well, after a period of time, the great crowds went away and the day had become night. And my nurse, It happened to be a person I knew. Actually, I did know her. She was once in my congregation in another city. Her name was Shirley. And she took me back through this house, past the grand dining room. And as I glanced through the door, I saw a beautiful banquet about to start. A great crowd of people were there laughing and eating and obviously having a wonderful time. And as I looked, I didn't see anyone that I immediately recognized. The faces were sort of familiar, but we were moving past them so quickly that I hadn't time to see who they were. I got the feeling that my nurse, Shirley, was trying to keep me from seeing who they were. Or perhaps she was trying to keep them from seeing me. Maybe she was hiding me. We went past the formal dining room out to a glass enclosed atrium, looking out over a large patio with all kinds of beautiful decorative lights and a gorgeous, ornate, lit swimming pool. I remember the sound of music and people gathering all around, having a wonderful time. And I remember the sounds of happy conversation and laughter. And through the distortion of the glass atrium, I could see dancing. It was a party of all parties. I also remember being very hungry. Does it sound like I really wanted some food? Also was mystified as to how all this activity could be going on around me, and yet no person acknowledged me at any time of being there. Why didn't someone offer me a bite to eat? Why didn't someone speak to me personally? No, the only person who would speak to me was my nurse Shirley. I knew her name because, as I said a moment ago, I had known her earlier. And I remember asking her these questions. Why no food? Why no acknowledgement from anyone except from her? And she said that the reason for all this inattention was due to the fact that I was not supposed to be there. She was, in fact, hiding me there until a room could be found at the hospital. It all seems that there was no room in the inn, as they say. So until a room was found over at the hospital, over at the medical center, I was to be discreetly kept in the Blue House. Now, I want to assure you that there is no Blue House on the west side of Hillside, just north of Wesley Medical Center. I've been looking for years. Every time I pass that location, though, I want you to know that I get this feeling, this inner feeling. Even today, I can go by there today and I'd get it again, that I'm in the presence of something or some place very holy. I always experience an overwhelming feeling whenever I pass that place. And if you drive by that location, or would have driven by that location in 2006, you would have seen, oddly enough, the Hillside Funeral Home on the south side of the street, or rather on the west side of the street. And then you would find the Highland Cemetery to the north. Now I'll let you meditate on that a little while. Really strange. You know, the ancient Celtic Christians of St. Patrick, Brendan, and Columba consistently taught that it's possible to experience what they call a thin place, which is a location that leads to a reality where the veil between heaven and earth is extraordinarily thin. Indeed, I'm referring to a place where we might be granted a glimpse into a more fully revealed realm or place of divine revelation. The Celts did, in fact, believe that there was sometimes possible to enter into such a mysterious place. There's no doubt that yet another place of mystery is described in the biblical account of Jacob's ladder back in Genesis. I love that story. The story that we've all heard many times before, I'm sure. And I don't know if my blue house was some kind of vestibule into a more fully revealed realm of God. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I do know that I experienced something that for me at the time was very, very real. It was a beautiful place where I could be in the comfort of my loved ones for a time. It was a place where I was attended to by a very caring persons with what I might call angelic-like qualities. And it was a place where I could experience the joy of the people who dwelt there, even though I was not considered a part of that community. I was able to experience, or rather, I am able to experience even now, the anticipated excitement of someday going back and being a part of this great and wonderful feast that I never really got to enjoy, even having a place someday at the table. If I did get to see a glimpse of our future heavenly home, let me tell you something. It's going to be a wonderful place. We're going to see sights more beautiful than we've ever seen before. We're going to experience a welcome like we have never received before. We're going to eat like we've never eaten before, always and forever in the midst of an eternal banquet of joy. Yes, we will have singing and we'll have dancing in such a place. Now, let me tell you this, as long as I live on this earth, I'm going to be looking again to see this amazing blue house and to seek to dwell within its walls. But you know what? We don't have to look far. It's really very near. All we have to do is just look around on this very day and behold God's people. Look around and we can taste and we can see what God has prepared for us even now. We're gifted to live on an extravagantly beautiful planet. We don't have to hide in the shadows, for we're welcome triumphantly at God's table today. Yes, we can live and we can move and we can have our being right in this place, right here, right now, in the very presence of God, in the company of, yes, God's angels, who are ordinary people just like you and me, serving as angels to one another. We, who may in fact be the very people we know and we see and we love every day. I'm not talking about an angelic host somewhere. I'm talking about ordinary people. The central promise of the gospel is the assurance that our Lord ascended into heaven, into the very house of God, to add many more rooms for us, and that will someday come and take us to that roomy house that God has built. And then we will be with the Lord, and he will be with us. But until that day arrives, we're called to live here right now. Indeed, our home is here. Our family is here. Behold, even our feast is here. For this right here is also the place where God dwells. And wherever God dwells, our joy is full and our lives are absolutely complete. So, Jeff, that's dream number 2, the blue house.
You said that the blue house is quite memorable. People keep coming back to it, and I can see why. One thing that Father Spitzer said, Reverend Charles, is that there is the experience in the moment, but there's also that experience of what is to come that is common to near-death experiences.
That's right. That's right.
It's that dual experience, if you will.
And the anticipation of what is to come gives greater meaning to what is right now. It gives a greater depth of meaning to what we're experiencing this day. So every day is a day in the kingdom. I mean, as far as I'm, that's what it does for you.
Yes.
It really does.
Yeah, you said that so extremely well, because what I was trying to articulate is that you live with a sense of anticipation, but not in the sense of being so heavenly minded you're not any
Yeah.
earthly good,
That's
right?
right. That's right. Yeah.
So, Reverend Charles, you are a blessing, and we want to invite people to stay tuned for dream number 3. And remember that at the end of this series, there will be a time for us to have interaction with Reverend Charles where you can ask your questions and share your own experiences. Because, as Reverend Charles said, somehow, some way, in God's goodness, when people have similar experiences, it binds us together in very mysterious ways.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
Reverend Charles, thank you again for the gift of your life and for your willingness to share.
Thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to be here. Appreciate it so much.
Amen. So, everybody, God bless. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.